Okay, we have some more people that will be joining us, but let's get started. We have a full agenda. So welcome everyone. We're delighted to have you all. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the launch today of the Taskforce on Inequality and Social-Related Financial Disclosures. I'm Kate Talent-Meyer, and I'm the Interim Executive Director for the TISFD. I'm delighted to welcome you all to our program. We're going to be introducing our 4 co-chairs who will share their vision for the task force and discuss key questions related to our work ahead. And we'll conclude the session with a few words on how you can engage with us moving forward. But before we begin, we'd like to start with opening remarks from Marcos Neto. Marcos is the Assistant Administrator and Director of the Bureau for Policy and Program Support at UNDP, one of TISFD's founding partners and our administrative host. Marcos, thank you for joining us. Over to you.
Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever you are. It's great to see you, Kate, and thank you for the introduction. I'm coming to you from New York City, where we are finally at the last day of the 79th UN General Assembly. It's about time it ends, but it has been a very productive and good week and a perfect moment to launch TISFD. The topics addressed by the task force are very close to my heart. I've seen over my professional career, both at UNDP and in my 17 years with civil society, with CARE International, the vital importance of fairness and social justice as a right thing to do, as well as enablers for resilient societies. These will become even more critical as the interplay of climate change and nature losses exacerbate inequality and thus the pressure on our political and economic systems. The launch of the task force places against the backdrop of a downward shift to the path of global human development after 20 years of steady progress. As you may know, UNDP has been measuring human development through the Human Development Index for the last 30 years, and triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic and the interconnected crises that have followed, inequality between countries at the bottom of and the top of the Human Development Index scale is increasing, ending decades of convergence across countries. Globally, the top 10% earn 53% of income and hold 76% of wealth. And income and wealth inequality within many countries have reached levels not seen in 100 years. We are facing a global gridlock with increasing polarization undermining social cohesion and stability, as well as an international cooperation necessary to address global challenges such as climate change and nature loss. Again, I would urge you to go and have a look at the latest Human Development Report, which is all about this polarization. Business and financial institutions are affected by social challenges through dampening productivity, innovation, and economic dynamism, for example, and contribute to them through their decisions and day-to-day operations. But there is currently a lack of clarity on the ways in which companies' actions impact people and contribute to inequalities, and how these inequalities affect business and finance in turn. Competing disclosure and reporting frameworks place a high burden on companies, while existing indicators and metrics fail to enable effective decision-making across investors and investees to manage these risks and impact. TISFD will help address these gaps and weaknesses by formulating a global framework with disclosure recommendations to help companies and financial institutions identify, assess, and report the inequality and social-related impacts, dependencies, risks, and opportunity. Task force work will also help market actors understand the implications of the aggregate impacts of investors and their investees on inequality and enhance their ability to manage associate system-level risks. At UNDP, we feel privileged to be counted among the more than 20 organizations founding partners of TISFD. The commitment and dedication of these organizations and the generous contributions of TISFD donors have made possible the launch of the task force today in laying solid foundation for its work in the future. Thank you very much. We look forward to a very dynamic process of dialogue, mutual learning, and consensus building to deliver on the task force ambition plan. Focus ultimately on leveraging private sector's strength towards more resilient and fair economies and society. Let me end by saying that this task force comes to a moment which is fundamentally important. to complement other similar efforts on climate and nature. Without addressing inequality and social issues, climate and nature policies will fail. We are excited to introduce the leaders of TISFD, its co-chairs. Kate Mayer, the interim executive director, will facilitate the introductions and moderate the discussions. I have to now run to finish the United Nations General Assembly meetings today. I wish you all an amazing event, an amazing conversation. You can count on UNDP going forward to support this task force and to make sure that the issues of inequality and social development are level up with issues of climate, nature, and other aspects, therefore delivering the sustainable development goals. Thank you very much. Over to you, Kate, and congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Marcos. Really appreciate those kind words. We're delighted to be working with UNDP and continuing our work with you as we move forward. Next, we will hear from our co-chairs. I'm delighted to introduce Sharon Burrow, former General Secretary of the International Trade Union Confederation, Gabriela Ramos, Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences at UNESCO, Arun Maote, academic at the University of Oxford and former treasurer of the World Bank and former director general of the SEC in Nigeria, and Peter Bacher, president and CEO of the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. We're really honored to have 4 exceptional global leaders guiding this task force, each bringing their unique expertise and perspectives to our mission. Together, we really do share this unified vision to incentivize businesses and financial practices that create fairer, stronger societies and economies. Through the leadership of our co-chairs, along with our steering committee, TISFD will set the stage for businesses and financial institutions to meaningfully address, as Marcos said, their impacts, dependencies, risks, opportunities related to people. And I'd love to ask now each of our co-chairs to elaborate a bit on their vision for the task force. We'll start, Sharon, with you. Sharon, you've played a key role in advancing human and labor rights, and I'd love to hear your perspective on how the task force can create meaningful change.
Thank you, Kate, and I'm really proud to be working with these amazing people as co-chairs, and I know the rest of the team, we will make a strong contribution. But as a labour leader of more than 30 years, I've walked our supply chains. I've worked with progressive business leaders to try and make sure that they are based on rights, on dignity, on respect for decent work. But we know that, in fact, the exploitative model of too many of those business leaders' competitors is not just creating distress for the individuals, it's actually holding communities back, it's holding business back, because an exploitative model based on is not the future we want to base our commitment to people and to planet on. People must be at the centre of our economic transition. As we tackle climate change, as we protect and repair nature, there's no doubt that we must shift the business model, not just to disclosure, but in fact to take in the externalities and plan for impact on people and communities, on the climate, on nature, that is not destructive. If we recognise that environmental sustainability and social equity are deeply interconnected, then the TISFD places human well-being at the forefront of its mission. Business can contribute to that, but we want to make sure the partnerships are strong and that our recommendations ensure that economic progress does not come at the expense of people's rights and livelihoods. So, put simply, we aim to create a more inclusive and sustainable future that respects people, respects our planet. Our goal is to create a global disclosure framework that supports and incentivises effective monitoring, management and reporting of human rights, labour rights, inequality and other social risks. We want to see the business model implement an approach that is not just about disclosure, although that's critical, but is about changing the business model to put people and planning for people and planet at the heart of its business thinking. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Gabriella, I'd love also to hear you build out your thoughts. Your role at UNESCO has been really pivotal in advancing progress on tackling social problems, and I'd love to hear your perspective on and hope for the impact that the task force can have.
Well, thank you so much, and great to come after Sharon, because she makes it easy by putting these very important elements there, and also Marco. And great to be with these amazing leaders in this co-chairing of the task force. Thank you, Kate. As you said, I have had my whole career in the multilateral system, now as Assistant Director General of Social and Human Sciences at UNESCO, that oversees actually the building of more inclusive societies and the use of ethical artificial intelligence, but also previously at the OECD working with my dear Romina Guarini on the inclusive growth agenda that was so core into the action of the OECD at the time. We know it. We're 20 years since we have been discussing these issues, and the level of inequalities of income and opportunities continue to increase and are being exacerbated by the major trends we are confronting: the climate transition, the digital transformation, migration, demography, gender. All of these things really put to a real question mark on how much can we advance to diminish the inequalities. Our societies, our economies, our politics are divided, and therefore we need a major repair that is not going to be found in the traditional economic models that consider the social impact of our decisions as something to be fixed ex post through social policies and redistribution. It needs a major change in the economic narrative that brings equality and sustainability objectives on an equal footing with productivity and growth when measuring success. And it needs to bring the private and the financial sector to change the way they define and measure their objectives and actions, ex ante. Therefore, the role of this task force, in which we have a lot of hope, is going to be essential, because it will be advancing this global disclosure framework that will encourage organizations to consider the broader impact of their operations in an ex ante manner and make the social implications of business models transparent. And this is a necessary step to create incentives to move in the right direction, using the market tools we have to create incentives. And it also makes clear the risk that businesses confront in the divided context, as inspired by what had happened in the climate disclosure. We need to integrate the private sector and the financial sector in the solution, because with that, we can drive meaningful change that aligns economic progress with positive social impact.
Thank you. Thank you, Gabriella. Aruna, you bring extensive experience in identifying and addressing inequalities within capital markets. I'd love to turn to you next. What does success for the task force mean to you? Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you, Kate, and Sharon and Gabriella. As you said, I'm an academic at the University of Oxford. I'm actually currently in Abuja, Nigeria. And for me, it's important that I share first that I've lived and worked both in the global South and the global North. I've been a regulator. I've worked in the public and private sectors. So I am an example of what equal opportunity can enable. So absolutely honored to work with my co-chairs and other distinguished experts to contribute my lived experience to such a laudable initiative for society. To your question, I believe that no one benefits when anyone is disadvantaged. If the global economic system doesn't work for all and various forms of inequality are not addressed, we will neither have prosperous citizens anywhere in the world, nor a safe and peaceful planet. Recognizing that widespread inequality undermines both economic prosperity, as Sharon mentioned, and global stability, the task force aims to reshape financial disclosures to be more inclusive and equitable. This change will help capital markets ensure equal opportunity for all by developing a global disclosure framework businesses will be able to embed considerations of human rights, labor rights, and social risks into their decision-making processes. Success will be game-changing for society because the work of the task force is a critical step towards fair and transparent financial disclosures. It will also bring true equity by embracing previously marginalized voices around the world. By standardizing how organizations report on social-related issues, we can also empower all stakeholders to hold businesses and financial institutions accountable for their social impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Arunma. Peter, let's turn to you next. Your leadership in corporate sustainability is so essential in how we shape our approach. Could you share how you see TISFD helping businesses and financial institutions?
Thank you, Kate, and hello, everybody. Great to see my co-chairs. Thanks to everybody for joining us online. You're right. I've led WBCSD now for the last 12 years. 250 of the largest companies working on climate change, on nature loss, and on mounting inequality. 2 years ago, we started the Business Commission to tackle inequality. Sharon and others were part of that exercise, in which we basically mapped what is inequality, how is that a systemic risk, how does that translate into business risk, and why should businesses pay attention to this agenda? One of the key conclusions actually out of that work is that the way that business makes decisions today, the way that businesses are managed, the way that capital markets looks and values of businesses does not incorporate the social and inequality related risks, the dependencies and the impacts that business actually has on society and on people in it. So out of that came the conclusion that if it wasn't being worked on, TISFD should have been invented, and here we are today on the launch stage. So that's fantastic. It is partly corporate decision making, partly corporate disclosures, but it's also about how financial markets will then pick up this decision useful information and provide incentives for a much fairer and more equal and inclusive world. And I think we've seen similarly in climate. I think it was 8 years ago that TCFD was launched. 3 or 4 years ago, TNFD was launched. And I'm just super happy that today we're doing the same for social impacts and inequality. So TISFD, I guess this is the official birthday. So congratulations to you, Kate.
Thank you, Peter. I like thinking of this as the birthday. Well, thank you to all of our co-chairs. We want to share a couple of questions that we frequently get, and hear your thoughts on these questions. They delve a bit deeper into some of the topics that each of you have touched on, and so we'll talk through 3 questions. The first one, Peter, back to you. I'd like to build on your previous points to understand more about how TISFD fits into the wider disclosure landscape.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, the comment to make is always, do not make the mistake that TISFD is about disclosures or reporting, because that's the mistake that everybody always makes in the sustainability world. The reporting bit is the end of a process in which better decisions are made, and that's how you influence the social impacts towards a more positive outcome. But obviously, disclosure is important. The current disclosure landscape is incredibly fragmented. If you ask businesses what are the metrics you should use to determine your social impacts and risks, you get very different answers. There's no comparable data, there's no standards. So that is something that quickly need to be brought into play. Obviously, TISFD doesn't live in isolation. There's a whole landscape of actors and initiatives on the way. One is, of course, ISSB is now launched research into the human capital disclosure framework. So it will be critical for TISFD to collaborate with all these elements, with GRI, with EFRAG, with all the alphabet soup that is still out there. But I think it's critical that we look at what are the decision-making metrics that business needs? How do you disclose that? And most importantly, how does that become decision useful information for capital providers so that the economic incentives become fairer and the whole system becomes more equitable?
Thank you. Yeah, we have laid some more detail on this out in our people in scope document, which you can see on our website. But one of our key design principles is to be integrated with reporting standards, and our partnerships that we've established with standard setters as well as with TNFD are really critical to our approach. Arunma and Sharon, next question is for you. I'd love to turn to you to discuss how the task force will engage with businesses and financial institutions, and what you see as the value add of the task force for them.
Yeah, okay, maybe I'll start and then hand over to Sharon. In several ways, for example, TISFD will actively engage corporates and investors through its inclusive governance model, involving them directly in the process of developing the framework. This collaborative approach ensures that the resulting outputs are mutually agreed upon, they're practical and valuable for their reporting disclosures. By participating in this process, businesses and financial institutions, in my view, will gain a deeper understanding of how social and inequality issues contribute to systemic risks that can affect financial markets and the global economy. I have no doubt that the framework will also enhance productivity and spur innovation. Sharon.
Sharon, you're on mute.
Thank you, Aruma. I would just add to that by saying that exploitation cannot be the basis of business if we think about it from a risk perspective, because we already know that the risks are there, the risks of increased social disillusionment, conflict at the end of that spectrum, the loss of productivity and demand that generates its own decline cycle for business itself. So for investors, if you start at the investment end, and for labor, this is critical because workers have more than $40 trillion of their pension funds invested in the global economy. We do not want to see those funds put at risk, and nor do we want to see them actually, guilty of exploiting the planet or extracting vital elements from the planet and creating emissions, destruction of nature, but particularly we don't want to see them used for work that is not decent. If you think about risk, and systemic uses a figure that says if you don't involve people in planning on climate-related projects from the beginning, if you don't get the working conditions right, if you don't respect rights, you put at risk already in the global economy some $100 billion worth of climate finance. So that's just an indication of what happens if you don't put people and planet at the heart of it. So I just wanted to reiterate something Peter said, because this is about transparency. It's about strengthening relationships and potentially enhancing financial performance and ultimately committing to that global stability. But if we think about it as an end process, which is just disclosure, then we're not actually considering what the recommendations must do, which is actually to put up front the sorts of issues that ought to be taken into the business model, the externalities, the risks that must be accounted for in planning, so that when you get to disclosure, it should be, apart from a transparent issue of where we still have issues, it should be a good news story. So this is the missing piece. Climate disclosure, nature disclosure, but where are the people? Well, here they are, and inequality and rights must be at the heart of that if we're serious about an inclusive business practice.
Thank you, Sharon. The last question, Gabriella, I'll turn to you. I know we only have a couple of moments left, but I'd love to hear how we get the question quite often on how we will ensure inclusive governance process so that our work is truly authentically informed and driven by perspectives from a diverse range of stakeholders across sectors, communities, geographies, backgrounds. Could you share your thoughts on this?
Well, first and foremost, I will say to whomever said that question that you just need to look at the co-chairs in terms of inclusiveness and representation. Sorry, Peter, 3 women, but again, it's fine. We are convinced that to have solid outcomes, we need to have also not only inclusiveness as a goal, but inclusiveness as a process. This cannot be a conversation among the experts from certain countries that are overrepresented in the financial markets, that have all the models and all the answers, because we know where this has gotten us. And therefore, it's very important that we do it in a very open and transparent manner to be informing the general public of how we are making progress. I'm very pleased that that's part also of the roles of the co-chairs, to be overseeing the steering committee work, and to ensure that whenever we have findings, that we can test them, that we can go out to the different places that need to be bringing their voices, to the workers, to the civil society, to the academics, to countries that maybe would not be the first place where you go. But when we talk about divided societies, everybody has something to say. And I feel the more we listen to them, it would be much more solid, whatever outcome we have. I'm also very pleased, if you allow me, Kate, to say that UNESCO is a knowledge partner, and we will bring also all of our networks, and I'm sure that all of my co-chairs will bring all of their networks, as Aruma said, being in the global north, in the global south, and reaching out to so many people around. We will be very pleased to bring, for example, the program of social transformation that I led, because then we can really get the feedback of all the stakeholders. Then I hope that we will be leveraging also from previous experiences from the Taskforce on the climate-related financial disclosures, the TCFD and TNFD, because it means research, it means stakeholder outreach, and many other forms in engagement, to continuously having this sounding board, being super open, because many times just listening to people and receiving their feedback will ensure that we not only learn, but we get something that is much more solid.
Thank you, Gabriella. Thanks so much to each of you. We are, as I said before, couldn't be more honored to have you as our co-chairs. I hope this webinar has been helpful to everybody that's listening in. Briefly, we just wanted to touch on how you can engage with us moving forward. We have one slide that we'll pull up to share. There's 3 ways that you can engage with the task force moving forward. These are also on our website, which is TISFD.org. Number 1, sign up to our mailing list. You can keep updated with our latest developments, resources, upcoming events. Number 2, please join our LinkedIn group. You can connect with others across our network. And number 3, learn about joining the TISFD Alliance. We have just opened up the Alliance, and it will be our primary consultative network, and will be essential in helping us to develop the disclosure recommendations that we develop over the coming years. And we'll be looking to build out the Alliance over the coming months. So please do look at our website for more information on that. We really look forward to working with everybody as we begin this next phase of our journey. We'll be sharing a recording of this presentation with everyone, so please do feel free to reshare it widely, distribute it with your colleagues and networks. And thank you, everybody, for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful weekend.